done it before.
Yeah, no, I know Russell.
But I like. Here, there's not a whole lot of ties. You see, a lot of the guys in Ione got the mayor that I know from Ione. He said Ione is food corruption as much as here and everywhere else. You know.
My name is Stephanie Young, and I'm the program chair for the American Association. Designed to develop interest and excitement for STEM fields. And then a new state program that we are participating in is GovTrek, a free virtual program for 11th and 12th grade girls to encourage them to consider public service and or elected office as part of their career path. It's really exciting, and but just getting off the ground. So if you know someone in your family or friends or neighborhood who is that age group, encourage them to look into it. We're currently accepting applications for all of our scholarship programs through March. So you can find more information and applications on our website. If any of this has piqued your interest, the Amador branch welcomes new members. We're now offering a great opportunity to join at a reduced rate. And by the way, you have to have a college degree of some kind. It could be an undergraduate degree or a BA or an AA degree or whatever. Also, men can join, and several branches have a lot of men. We've had a couple of male members over the years, not currently, but please feel free. If you're in support of our mission, then we welcome both genders, all genders. Okay, so if any of this has piqued your interest, please think about joining. Michelle back there at the table has information, and we have a special program called Shape the Future. Our regular annual membership fee is $112, but if you join at a program or event sponsored by us, it's reduced to $76 for that first year. So please talk to Michelle if you have any questions. All right, here are the guidelines for tonight's forum. We'll begin with position statements by each candidate. We'll continue with questions from the audience cards that you filled out, alternating who speaks first. Therefore, everybody gets to go first and everybody gets to go last somewhere along the way. Candidates are allowed 2 minutes to respond to each question, and each candidate will provide a closing statement of 3 minutes at the very end of the evening. The focus of tonight's forum will be on county issues and how each candidate plans to address them. Without further ado, I'd like to introduce Beth Goodland-Jones, who is our moderator for the evening. And then Greta will be timing, so she's the one holding up a sign saying, stop, or 1 minute left, or whatever, okay? So thank you very much, enjoy the evening, and let's get started.
Is this adequate volume, or too loud, or too quiet? Oh, good. Thank you very much. And thank you so much for being here tonight. Thank you to the candidates for coming as well. We appreciate your time. We will start with the opening statements, and as we have our format here, I'll be reading the questions, and the candidates are asked to use their 2 minutes response time as they choose. We ask that the audience not interrupt their response time or my question time. Thank you. Let's begin with Mr. Epperson with your opening statement, please. You will have 3 minutes, and Greta will indicate your time as we follow along. Thank you so much.
Very good. Thank you. No.
Oh, there we go. Oh, much better. Thank you. Time starts now. There we go. Okay, all right, very good. All right, thank you. Well, good evening. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for coming out tonight. I do appreciate the attendance tonight. I'll just kind of start on my background. So I've been in Ione about 22 years, pastor a church there. I've been on the Ione Business Community Association for most of that time. Currently I serve on Nexus, which is a Health and Family Services Board, and I'm working with a group to help save Ione Elementary School. I teach hunter education. Of all the things I do, the crazy thing, most people know me from teaching hunter education, which I think is kind of interesting. But my passion though really is to help the citizens of Ione and the Ione Valley now. When I first got elected, you don't really know what you're getting into, but I got into it as a hornet's nest, and I didn't really calm down a whole lot, but it's been off and on. But when I got there, I heard all kinds of rumors and stuff, and we found out after a short bit that we were really, really in debt, and we began to put together a plan. When I came in, I was looking it up today in the back there, we were $1.2 million in the red in the general fund. When I left, there was about $12.2 million in the city when I left. So that's a huge turnaround from when we began. And it took us about 5 years to work our way out of that situation, but it was a lot of stress, a lot of fun meetings, but I really did, it was one of those areas where working with good staff, hiring quality people, and listening to people that are around you, getting good audits, getting back to a normal budget cycle that we're able to pull out of that. And it was a heavy lift. I mean, somebody accused me of getting a city in debt. I kind of laughed because I'm like, in my living room I sat down and put together a plan to get the general fund out of that hole. And I presented it to the finance director, to our finance committee, and eventually it passed through city. And it took, even with all that, it still took about 5 years to get out of that debt. And I think I did a fair job. I enjoyed mostly meeting people and helping solve problems. I think probably one of the coolest things, I had some campaign trail thing, and a gal, she asked me, she goes, if I could do anything, I'd move that sign 100 yards. And I'm like, well, I think I might be able to do that. I went down to the city hall and I talked to the manager, and he's like, where do they want it? And then it was done like 2 days later. I couldn't believe it. I'm like, I did something, And sometimes the pace of government is slow and sometimes it's fast, but if you can learn to get involved, to dig in, and really just kind of get to know the people you work with, and hopefully you can make a difference. Don't take things too personally, even if it is. A lot of times it's real personal, and I don't hold grudges. I forgive easy, but I also, I'm determined to defend Ione and now my district if I get the opportunity, and I thank you for your support. Thank you.
Thank you so much, and I should have also commented, thank you for not applauding in between each comment. As we move on down the table, please, Mr. Mitchell.
Well, first of all, I'd like to thank AAUW for having us out here for this monumental evening. It's very much appreciated. I love your organization. My daughter actually was one of the benefactors for a scholarship from you guys. And so you've been life-changing for my family. For those of you that don't know me, I'm Jack Mitchell. I am the publisher of the Ledger-Dispatch, have been for 23 years. I lived in Pine Grove for a while, moved to Sutter Creek, and then moved from Sutter Creek to Ione, to the shock of many, many people. Fell in love with Amador County as a whole, and wear a lot of hats, I guess. And as that's progressed, I've been involved in a lot of things I never thought I would be involved in. I became a firefighter at the age of 50, volunteer firefighter, EMT. I have served as the president of the Chamber of Commerce, president of Operation Care, number of boards. I'm a third generation Paul Harris fellow. Right now I'm also on the city council, which we managed to pass a balanced budget after we borrowed for 20 years, and borrowed from 23 restricted funds prior to me. We've got a balanced budget this year and have been doing some amazing things. I believe in accountability, I believe in transparency. When you talk about the problems that we're facing, I think there's a lack of services in our area, the schools being taken from us, and I think it's time we get a hospital or a clinic down in our district. It's needed. I know that safety is one of my #1 things I hang my hat on. That's why I became a firefighter. I fell in love with the district. I drive it every week, actually, every inch of it. So when you say, do you know the district? Well, I can tell you when you're coming off Grapevine Gulch and onto Village Road there, the tree is blocking the stop sign. Or if you're coming up Jackson Valley, that new pothole, I hit it every week. So I think the infrastructure, you're going to need someone that really knows budgets and really knows how to manage money, and you're going to have to face some very real problems. I think you got probably about $600 million in problems and 60 million to fix. So you're going to have to prioritize and come up with a plan. I do that all the time. I'm hoping for your vote. I'm interested in hearing what you guys are looking for. Here to listen, here to learn, and definitely here to serve you, all of you. So I'm asking for your vote. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Mitchell. And now next we'll go to the Mr. Parker, also running for District 2.
Is this on? Yeah, we're here. My name is Russ Parker. We came to Amador 8 years ago, a little over 8 years ago, just before the Butte fire. And we have a 20-acre ranch where we raise miniature dairy goats. Mainly interested in trying to make sure that Amador stays the kind of place that we came here for. So looking at the 10, 20, 30-year plan. And a huge part of what the Board of Supervisors does is look at that long-term strategic thinking. So don't want to look up in 20 years and realize that things have happened and wonder why. So that was one, sort of one of my big drivers in running for this. We moved up here from Wilton, and a big part of that was seeing Elk Grove rolling towards us. The elementary school that I'd walked my son to, they rebuilt it into an absolutely beautiful school, but it clearly was now sized to take 3 to 4 times as many kids. So that was sort of, you don't do that if you're not expecting to have 3 to 4 times as many kids going there. So that's kind of what brought us to Amador. That and the goats were petitioning for more space. So my background is in the IT consulting field, IT finance management, IT asset management, and wasn't sure how much of that would apply, but as I've talked to a lot of the county officers and things, it's all the same kinds of problems. It's just with different names. It's water and roads instead of power and cooling, when you're in a data center. So for me, it's wanting to bring that experience into the Board of Supervisors, seeing that Richard was retiring and wanting to make sure that whoever was going into that role had a strong ag background as well, and that they'd be, as far as the district goes, focusing on the whole district. Ione is a huge part of that, but it's only about half of the district in terms of population, making sure that the whole district is represented. And as Jack said, transparency, accountability, and the thing I add to that is communication, because there really seems to have been an overall lack of communicating back and forth with the citizens of Amador in terms of why particular decisions have been made, how those decisions came to be, and engaging with people. So I'm hoping to set up town halls that in the district that we have probably quarterly, where people can come and talk about things, and just try to make sure that people are able to engage as directly as possible with the county government, and do what we can to help them achieve what it is that they want to do, and listen to them.
Thank you. And now, Mr. Carnell for District 4.
Good evening. Working? Good evening. Thank you all for coming out. Thank you, the Amador Association of University Women. I know this was a lot of work to put on, and it is really a true community service. In honor of your association, I'm going to tell my story backwards. My daughter's about to graduate from Fresno State University. She's my campaign manager. She was the president of Amador student body, and I hope to see her sitting here someday. She was inspired to go to university because she watched my wife, who, as the kid said, went back to college as an old lady in her 40s, and got a degree, and she works with Child Protective Services here in the county. My daughter's heading towards the social work degree because she wants to help adopted kids like her. The reason my wife went to university is because we made this promise when we got married that no dream would go unfulfilled. So even after she and I, as kids with almost no money, started a local business that grew to become voted the #1 in its class for over 20 straight years here in the county. And we founded a nonprofit, a mission organization that took us to every inhabited continent, and we've been in some of the most remote places in the world. And even after raising a family and doing all of the school activities, she came to me one day and she said she has a new dream and she wants a new challenge. So off we went to try to learn algebra again after 30 years. As for me, after I graduated Amador and after I got out of the Army and after I married Desiree, I was set off for toward the path toward law school, and I was working in the mountains and I just couldn't get that out of my blood. I fell in love with being a part of the local economy, and I fell in love with the dignity of the trades. So I'm running for office because, for many reasons, but the main reason is I want our kids to be able to raise their kids here. We're at a point right now in our community that we're out of balance. Our working age families are headed out of town looking for better pay somewhere else. And the people who provide us our food and our services are our younger working families, and they're not staying anymore. So I have a lot of ideas on things that the Board of Supervisors could do, because in the end, we can have all the plans that we want, but if there's nobody around to do them, then we're going to struggle as a community. Thank you.
Thank you. And now for District 4 as well, Ms. Peters.
So I'm going to ask the audience, I have a very not male booming voice, so if you can't hear me, please raise your hand or point to your ear. I also tend to talk a lot during the day, so I lose my voice easily. So I'm Susan Peters. I'm a longtime resident of Amador County. I was raised in Pine Grove. I graduated from Amador High School. I left Amador County to go to UC Santa Barbara and pick up a degree in environmental studies. From there, I went to UCLA and got a degree in urban planning. And then I came back to Amador County to marry my husband and live in Sutter Creek and raise 3 children. And I now have 2 grandchildren that live in Ione that I'm very excited to participate in their lives. And we have a basketball game, by the way, tomorrow, honey, that we need to attend. When I came back, I put my education to work, not just in starting a consulting firm providing planning services, but also doing volunteer work. My planning consulting work immediately got off the ground with providing planning services to the city of Jackson. I was their city planner for 26 years. I left in 2022, had recently come back and am helping them with some of their long-term planning projects. I'm also providing right now the planning services to the city of Ione and to the city of Amador City, which is very fun working for that small jurisdiction. All my planning professional career, and then including being an interim city manager for the city of Jackson for 9 months in 2017 during a very tumultuous time period, demonstrated to me that I had the abilities to lead. And I took my planning skills and my leadership skills, and I ran for office in 2018 and became your District 4 Director for the Amador Water Agency. When I first started with the water agency, I thought that things were going great and quickly found out that we had a lot of problems, and I've had to make a lot of tough decisions, and I've learned a lot, and I've honed my leadership skills, and I'm ready to take those skills to the Board of Supervisors, and I hope that you consider voting for me on March 5th.
Thank you all for your opening statements. Now we'll begin with the questions. The first question will be for, and all of the candidates will have a chance to answer each of these questions, the same question. So let's begin with Mr. Epperson. The first question is, what is your top issue facing your district, And what are your plans to address that issue?
Yeah, I think the big issue right now is there's two kind of looming issues. One is the water that just became forefront. I mean, we have a moratorium on building. Apparently, it's not quite in effect yet. I talked to a developer and some other people that are interested in the area, and it's going to be a problem. One of the reasons we were able to keep sewer rates low in Ione in particular was because we had it was a little faster growth than I would have preferred, but those developer agreements were set years and years ago. That being said, when we kept adding connections, it kept pace with cost of living. And currently, right now, we hired a new wastewater operator. The city did. It's going to cost about $1 million, be $500,000 in about 4 years, and that is going to be that's going to be a problem. We're going to have to raise rates because there's no building. That means there's no new connections. Cost of living goes up. We have no money coming in, and that fund it pays for a bunch of other stuff too. So the drinking water is the big thing. If we have plenty of water, we need production. That's the issue. As a supervisor, one of my goals would be to secure funding from the state or wherever else we can get it to get that up and running as fast as possible. Then I think the other huge issue is going to be mental health care, because Proposition 1, should it pass, we're going to have to take care of a lot of people with a lot of problems. I serve on Nexus and we do family counseling there. I mentioned that today. And it's a looming issue. We know that Calaveras is building a place, we think, in either Valley Springs or San Andreas to address some of those issues. There's a possibility we could partner with them and a contract with them. But those two things are, and it could be, it could be a business opportunity if you want to call it that. But if the states, they mandate these things and we have to figure out how to solve them, they pull the funding on it. So those two things, between water and mental health care, I don't know how those two things go together, but those are two big issues I think that are going to be right in the forefront here by the time we assume office.
Thank you. Mr. Mitchell, the same question, please.
Well, I think everything's going great down in the district, so shouldn't be a problem at all. I think it's like, is the glass half empty or half full? And I'm the kind of guy that's like, didn't I order fries with this? And I think it's time we all got some French fries with it. Healthcare, we need a clinic down in our area. We need services that are growing with our city as opposed to going away. Water is certainly an issue. The AAUW did the right thing. The plan was blown a while back and we didn't keep up pace with it. But we also didn't go after the mitigation money that should have been coming from CDCR that uses 30 to 50% of the capacity of that and got no money when they expanded their facility. We should have been fighting for that money. The sewer system for the city down there could be a regional plant very easily. Same thing there. They had a contract that they never went after. That they owe us a sewage treatment plant. I think rates will have to go up regardless. However, it's time we got some of the funding that we were supposed to get from some of the guys that we let into our neighborhoods. And then you have the roads. And that's going to be a problem. You need to start prioritizing and figure out what you can do, work regionally, look at other counties, look at the system, work with ACTC and take a look at, they have a bypass plan that doesn't work. We haven't handed in any road structures, but we got to take care of the roads we have. So healthcare, safety, roads. I mean, I'm on those calls, I get it. I'm the one that gets to help try to piece you back together. It's time we do better on that. So that would be my answer.
Thank you, Mr. Mitchell. Mr. Parker, the top issue in your district, please.
Well, for me, the top issue is trying to bring a longer term vision to how we do things. There's a lot of things that go on where we're looking, at what's going to happen in the next 5 years. And I think, especially as far as the Board of Supervisors is concerned, that vision needs to be at least 10 or like 20 or 30 years down the road on how what's going on. I mean, that affects what's been talked about with water, and those issues aren't new. I mean, those were known and talked about back in 2006 and needed to be looked at and be working on with that. I mean, a lot of the problems we're facing are ones that were very foreseeable, and want to try and make sure that we are as a county looking at those and talking about them ahead of time rather than dealing with them in crisis mode, and just doing better overall long-term planning to try and keep us from being in the situations where things are a sudden emergency. I think the district itself, making sure that it's, all the outlying parts of the district are, listened to. The city of Ione obviously had a lot of growth and, a lot of things that are spotlighting on it, and that's very important. To make sure, though, that that doesn't completely overshadow the rest of the district as well. And make sure that we work on the overall communication of things. Because I think there's a lot of things that have happened in the county where people are just a little bit confused about why decisions were made or why things were implemented in the way they went, and trying to work on increasing that level of transparency, increasing that level of accountability, and driving that communication out so that nobody is, people might not be happy about a choice that's made, but no one should be confused about why that choice was made.
Thank you. Mr. Carnell, please tell us what you feel is the top issue facing your district. Thank you.
District 4 is very unique. It goes from downtown Amador City, up through Sutter Creek, up Ridge Road, through Pine Grove, down to Boo, down over to Ponderosa, and out to the McCullough River. So Amador City and Pine Grove aren't facing exactly the same issues, but the number one issue I've heard that is of biggest concern to our working age families is our fire insurance. It's become completely unaffordable, and I've spent my entire career helping people retain their fire insurance, and I have contacts all over that industry, and I have a lot of ideas of ways the Board of Supervisors can help lower our overall fire rating as a community so that we aren't receiving $11,000 a year fair plan bills. I don't know who that's fair to, but it's fair to someone, I guess, and I'm hearing that over and over and over again. So 2 minutes to fix all the problems in the county. I'll just mention the one issue that I hear the most. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Ms. Peters. What do you feel is the top issue facing District 4, and what are your plans to address it?
Well, wildfires definitely on the top of the list. Back in the 60s, there was a fire that started up on the Rancheria Ridge, way up country, and it came down and burned part of the high school, at Amador High School. So it is an important issue in our district. I currently represent the Amador Water Agency on the Amador Fire Safe Council. That council has been doing excellent work on getting funds to do fire prevention activities, fuel breaks. We've also coordinating with the Amador Fire Protection District to institute some ingress and egress and evacuation programs. It's very good work, and I think the Board of Supervisors needs to continue to support the work of the Amador Fire Safe Council. Additionally, we need to stop some of the legislation that's being proposed currently that will restrict the amount of work that we can actually do in the forests. Quickly, I'll touch on affordable housing. I think the county can get some policies in place to require inclusionary housing for all levels of affordability in their new development. And I also think that we can do things to protect our existing rental housing and our mobile home parks because those are very important to, they fill a very important niche in the affordability. And I'll finish with roads real quick. We got to fight for that infrastructure money that's coming from the federal government. We can't let it go to the cities, big cities. They shouldn't get all of it. We should get our fair share of that.
Thank you. Second question we'll pose first to Mr. Mitchell. The question is, please give us your impression of the status of county services provided to our unhoused neighbors and your plan for addressing these issues, as well as your plan for increasing the availability of affordable housing. What do you think affordable means?
Well, as far as what affordable means, it means you don't live in California. I moved here from the Midwest, had a 3,400 square foot house with 5 bedrooms and 4 bathrooms, and bought it for $99,000. The only way we were able to purchase a home here as a family was everyone else couldn't. And the market tanked, and we finally snuck our way in. Affordable housing is very important and needs to be done. I think you can mix that in with the developers throughout the county. You don't need to build one area as your affordable housing, but you do have to look at and protect the rental properties you have. You've got to look at the mobile home parks. You've got to come up with a plan that puts the more units out there across the way. Now, can you do that affordable? I'm not sure you can in California with all of the red tape and the pieces of but you got to work there, and then you've got to look at working with your senator. I've talked to Senator Alvarado Gill about it, and that's what we're hoping to do is come up with a plan. So.
Thank you, Mr. Parker.
It's a crucially important issue as far as actually having a plan on it yet. I'll be perfectly honest, I don't. I mean, but I think part of the experience I've had as a consultant is coming into situations and not bringing, not bringing an answer to it already. So looking at the situation with our unhoused citizens is going to be a big part of being on the board and being open-minded in terms of how do we approach that how do we engage with that community, realize that it's not capital T capital H the homeless, that there's if you talk to 20 people, you've got 20 different stories in terms of how they got there and what their needs are, and not trying to work with them as if it is one monolithic situation, but it's obviously crucial. It's a huge aspect of what we need to be doing. I don't have the answers on it. I wish I wish I had a perfect plan for it, but working with other people in the county and the other other people on the board and coming up in other organizations that are already doing really good work on that. We just had the point in time counts getting done these last couple of days. So there's a lot of experience and a lot of knowledge with different groups in the county, and working with them and trying to move that forward, because the current situation isn't good for anybody, whether they're housed or unhoused, and we definitely need to come up with some better answers for that hopefully improves life for everyone involved. Because I have a couple more moments. And that's really the fundamentals of it. I think anyone who tries to say that they know the answer doesn't.
Thank you. Mr. Carnell?
I think it remains to be seen what we can do, because there's going to be a proposition on the ballot next to our names that is going to affect any plans that we may have had formerly. I was at the Sierra Wind and Wellness Center yesterday, and they said if Proposition 1 passes, all their funding is gone. And I've heard from people at our HHS building that a lot of their funding is going to be removed as well. So Proposition 1 isn't going to print new money. It's going to take money from our other resources and use it how they deem fit. So I know here locally we have organizations that have intimate relationships with some of the unhoused and also the people right on the verge of being unhoused, and those organizations are going to lose their funding. So we're going to have to figure out what exactly we can get out of Proposition 1 and what we can do to support those entities, because Sierra Wellness saw 360-something people, or helped offer services to 360-something people. Only 50-something of them were unhoused. And I said, so if you're gone, are we going to have 350 beds as opposed to just 50? And they were in tears. We have heroes all over this community that are doing everything they can, and everything they worked for is about to go away. So we'll see what happens with Proposition 1, and then we'll have to muddle through. My one hope is that the state could, for the first time, replicate a smaller, more intimate, more personal, instead of a large, soulless solution to this problem. And we'll just have to see what happens. Thanks.
Thank you. Ms. Peters?
Thank you. Well, this is a two-pronged question. First, about homeless. I do believe that we need to continue to collaborate with those entities out there like the Amador Tuolumne Community Action Coalition that deals with provides shelter and funding programs for our unhoused right now. I think there's 3 different types of shelters in the city of Jackson. They do good work at those shelters. They manage them very well, so they have very little impact on the communities. And I think they're a good organization to continue to partner with. In regards to affordable housing, I already mentioned the inclusionary housing. I want to give an example of where that worked. So the inclusionary housing policy that I drafted for the city of Jackson that the city council approved there was put in place for subdivisions over 10 units. They had to provide a certain percent of the community of affordable housing in that development. If you go out onto the end of Scottsville Boulevard or Scottsville Drive in Jackson, you'll see there's very nice homes out there, but there's also a small-ish street with very nice smaller duplex homes, and you don't know that there's 2 of those houses that are first-time home buyers, very low income, and the other 2 are extremely low income. So that's a program that is working in the city of Jackson, has worked, and I think we can do more with the policies in place at the county to encourage that type of development in our community as well.
Thank you. Mr. Epperson?
I think 2 big things. One, if you don't have water production and there is a building moratorium, there is no affordable housing. That you have to have water to do that. And I can mandate 2 things. This issue also hits pretty close to my home. We have an unhoused young man staying with us. His sister stays across the street. And I say that because we've been taking care of him. We know the situation. It's been pretty tough. His mom left him, and so we take care of him. That being said, he's the anomaly. He's a really good kid. A lot of these people are on drugs. They've got mental health care issues. And that really is going to be the bigger issue because we are going to have to figure out how we're going to handle this and where they're going to be, where they're going to stay. I own probably the only applause I ever got in the city council was talking about homelessness. I owned had a handful of homeless people. We all knew who they were, and they didn't starve. They didn't die in the cold. We took care of them and managed them. Some of them I know are back in places where they stay. The other end of that are the drug addicts and the mentally ill, and we're going to have a place for them, and that's going to be the challenge. Yeah, because that prop money does come out, we are going to have to figure out where it's going to be, and that's going to be a fun conversation, I can assure you. They tried putting in affordable housing, and again, it is somewhat of a misnomer. Affordable doesn't mean for poor people or those people, which I hear all the time. It's for people that are less than the average income. And average income is $78,000 a year for a family. So low income can be people that are around $40,000, $50,000, and I know people all the time that are looking for houses and apartments. In fact, one of my little side gigs, I fix up apartments. I fix up things and fix floors and replace bathrooms and toilets and that kind of stuff for some property folks. But and I can tell those places rent quick, and so I know there's definitely a housing shortage in the area. As far as getting it done, I mean, you're going to have public buy-in. That would be where your community meetings are going to have to take place and figure out, where we're going to put them at, how we're going to put them, and where the funding comes from. And those are very challenging things to say the least, but there has to be a place for them, and we'll figure it out together.
Thank you. The next question says, currently the Board of Supervisor positions are for 4 years, and there are no limits to the number of terms a supervisor may serve. If elected, would you support term limits? Why or why not? And first to answer this would be Mr. Parker, please.
So I was going to wait till my second term to introduce term limits. The answer is yes. I think 3 terms of 12 years is probably at first blush a good first cut at that. Your sort of first term, you're getting a feel for what you're doing, and then the other 2 another 2 terms, and that's probably enough. I mean, I think we've had some supervisors who've been in for much longer, or currently have been in for much longer, and that hasn't been horrible. But I think having term limits in place would lead to a lot of new blood coming into the Board of Supervisors. I think there's, you know, we're running for a seat that's open. You know, running against an incumbent is far harder. Is far harder. You know, and a lot of people, I think, would bring a lot of value to the Board of Supervisors. Look at an incumbent and say, yeah, I'm not going to take that fight on. So knowing that every 12 years, you know, a particular seat at most would change over, I think would get people more involved in that, would tap into a whole new set of talent that could bring a lot to the Board of Supervisors. You know, and you know, it's not like you go away if you've been on the Board of Supervisors for 12 years. You know, I'm sure everyone's had the same conversation. You know, I've talked to Richard Forrester. He's not saying don't ever pick up the phone and call me. You know, so if we have, you know, we add term limits, you know, the people who've been in that seat before are almost certainly going to be open to still having their experience tapped into by the person who's in their seat at the moment. So I'm definitely in favor of term limits. I go with 3.
Mr. Carnell?
There's a danger in any institution of people being there too long and they start patting each other on the back with all of their great ideas and they forget the reason why they were there. And I've seen that in mission organizations, churches, I've seen it across the board. I've studied the foundation of our nation extensively, and I studied George Washington extensively, and they had to go drag him out of his field to hold office, and he did 2 terms. There were no rules in place until after FDR was done with his 3.5 terms. He said nobody should hold power for that long, so he headed back to his farm after a certain amount of time, after 2 terms. So I don't know exactly what people would want to set the term limits as. I think that should be left up to the people, but I just don't think anybody should stay in power for that long. They may forget that they were elected to represent the people.
Thank you. Ms. Peters?
Well, there's certainly pros and cons to the idea and the notion of term limits. I think in bigger areas, term limits certainly have value. In this area where it's small and there's not a lot of, let's face it, this room should be packed. There is not a lot of public participation. I sit in meetings all day, every day, where there should be people at those meetings and they're not. Making big decisions at the water agency and there are not people in the room. So I would worry with term limits that we would not get people to run for office. I've seen it in Amador City. They're very small. They've had trouble keeping people on the council. Sutter Creek, there's been times when we've had to go out into the public and drum up support to get somebody to run. So while I see there's merit to the idea of term limits, I worry about the size of our community being able to produce, members of the society, our community that are willing to put in the time to take office here. So,
thank you, Mr. Epperson.
Yeah, I think 3 terms is plenty. Thank you, Stacy, for that. You beat me bad in the polls last time. Don't cry about anything. No, I think 3 is probably good. I mean, it's your first couple of years. You're really just trying to figure out up from down, learning budgets, learning all the process, and it's a pretty heavy lift. And I felt comfortable in my seat after about the end of that 3rd year, and I felt like I had kind of a good look at what was going on. The problem is that when you do gain institutional knowledge, after a while, you just kind of get used to the problems. You're just like, well, this is part of the background noise. And when you come in fresh, everything's a problem, and you're like trying to take good notes and work through your work list of getting things done. I served 3 terms. I was happy with that. I ran for a 4th, a half a term, which I could have done either way. It's fine. It didn't bother me. I'm great. But it does take a little bit to learn that your second term, you're really starting to see the fruit from your first term. And honestly, a lot of the good stuff you see, it takes about 7, 8, 10 years for the really good stuff to take place. And you get into politics, you think you're going to change the world, and you will, but the world spins a lot slower than you realize. And hopefully when you get it done, you look back and say, hey, I made some good decisions back then that's yielded fruit today. And I could say I did that. I saw that happen. I made good decisions early on. It seemed to take forever. And it's after I got done. I had my list is a little bit longer. That's why I'm running. So yeah, I think 3 is gobs. If you're in a smaller jurisdiction, every city certainly has that issue. It's hard to find the people that want to step up and be publicly ridiculed on a regular basis. So with that, thank you.
Mr. Mitchell?
I guess for me, I always want the best person in that seat that's elected, and I want it to be elected by the people. If the people said, hey, we need term limits, I think absolutely that'd be something you could go for. On the flip side, for me, if I've got the right guy in there and I've seen him 3 terms and would love to have him on a 4th term and he can't do it just because it's his time or her time is up, I don't know if that's right. But if it was voted that way, I could certainly follow it. I just don't think anyone that's in 3 terms is liked after that. So, so it's kind of a built-in term limit anyway.
Thank you. We'll go on to the next question. The question is, what is your stance on supporting the Williamson Act for agricultural property tax offset? And the first to answer, please, will be Mr. Carnell.
I think we all had breakfast or lunch or dinner today. I mean, somebody's got to grow our food. We've got to be able to pass down land from generation to generation and keep land at a large enough size that we can actually produce agriculture. I mean, one of the things everybody moves up here for is they drive into the big, beautiful open spaces and then they complain about the good old boy club. Like, well, yes, but there are a lot of families who have fought and scratched and scraped, and they were land rich and money poor for their whole lives, and they retained the open spaces that we have here in this community. The Williamson Act, I have a friend who was taken out of the Williamson Act against his will, and so he sold the property, and now it's subdivisions. So we have to protect our ranchers, we have to protect our farmers, we have to protect our water and our trades. And if that's the way, if they have to pay a little bit less taxes than housing development, then if that's what we have to do, then I just think it's imperative. So, thanks.
Ms. Peters.
So I agree the Williamson Act is something that's important to our agricultural industry up here. It's what protects our ranchers and farmers and grape growers up here from having to pay taxes that are well out of proportion to what their profits are. I think we have to go beyond that. When we do development, we have to provide buffers and making sure that the farmers and ranchers have the right to continue to do their jobs and not be impacted by the development that's around them. I know from firsthand experience planning for projects in the city of Jackson that we're interfacing with grazing lands that we always included buffers and restrictions in their CC&Rs with regards to how they were to interact with their farming and grazing or rancher neighbors. So yes, keep the Williamson Act, but build on that and protect our ranching and farming community.
Thank you. Mr. Anderson?
Yeah, part of what people move here for is the outdoors, the land that's here and how it's developed. I think the Williamson Act has been good for us by and large. As far as development, most developer agreements, and I've already complained about the development I own, but those developer agreements were put in by our fathers. They were in a long time before we ever got in office. They were there probably, I want to say 30 years earlier. And the problem is, you get a developer agreement in there, and it doesn't really kick in for a long time. The land's not worth a whole lot. But as property moves along, that's what Steve and I own there. That development took off because developer agreements were put in place a long time ago. Some of them, I think, in the 90s. And but yeah, the Williamson Act's important. I think we should keep on to it.
Mr. Mitchell?
I think it's definitely important. I think all of us enjoy living in the rural community, the rolling hills, the ranching, the agricultural phenomenon that is Amador County. I like buffers. I think that's an absolute must, and I think we need to protect our future. If you want to live in a big city, there's plenty of places to move to. We moved here because of the atmosphere, the people, and the families, and the farms. So I think it needs to stay that way.
Thank you. And Mr. Parker?
So I think everyone is essentially saying the same thing on this. I mean, it's why we're all out here. But, you know, the highest and best use for land isn't necessarily, you know, what you can get the most possible sale value on for it. So, you know, making it easier to keep things in agriculture so we don't end up doing, you know, what Sacramento and Elk Grove have done, where they've scraped clean some of the richest farmland, you know, on the planet and paved over and built houses. We don't want that, you know. So keeping that rural aspect of what Amador is hugely important. I think we're all in complete agreement on that. So I'm going to take a couple moments to you know, talk about what Susan said and completely agree in terms of engagement. You know, I was at the AAUW board meeting today. I was the only member of the public there. You know, it would be nice if we had more people engaged in that. And I think this ties back a little bit to the term limits question, because if there's more cycling through government and we work on building town halls and town hall meetings and more outreach and communication, and people feel like their engagement with their local county government actually is meaningful, I think more people would participate. As I've been walking around, the district, I've met a lot of people who are essentially disengaged because they feel like it just doesn't matter. It's like there's no point. And I think that's something that we really need to work on addressing and showing all of our citizens that if they get involved, that they can be heard, that people will listen to them and be accountable to them for the decisions they're making. And I think that will help lead to a larger base of people who are involved and are gaining experience and being those candidates who can step in after the 3 terms are up.
Thank you. Our next question is, what is your plan to attract business to the county that pays above the minimum wage level? We'll start with Ms. Peters.
Well, I think we have to start with keeping people in the county to start with. My parents, they lived up in Pine Grove, and my husband and I had to evacuate them twice because of the wildfires. And they could not live in fear anymore, and they moved out of state last February. So that's a big impact to our community when people don't feel safe living here, and they can't afford their fire insurance. So yes, I think it's important to attract business here, but I think we need to start with keeping our residents feeling safe and have, not being anxious about wildfire and being able to afford their insurance. And then affordability, keeping our kids can come back here and move into a place or buy a place. I talked about the inclusionary housing. That's something we can do going forward with development, but we also have to protect our existing rental markets. We should be having condominium conversion policies so that rental surveys have to be done before conversion of any of those rental properties. And over the past 25 years, California has lost over 200 mobile home parks. We've got to protect those mobile home parks from going away, because they do provide an affordable option for people to come back to and stay in this community.
Thank you. Our next question. Oh, I'm sorry. We're going to go all the way to the end. Mr. Epperson.
Sorry. We're going to feel left out for a second.
Sorry.
Economic development, we live in a changing economy, we've got to figure that out. Everything's different than it was just 10 years ago. I know I've talked to, I don't know how many business owners lately. I talked to Rick Finch today down at the shop there, and he's like, he can't find a kid that wants to work and wants to do auto. He just can't find them. And it's not because it's not paying, it's just because it's a different economy. And trying to find people that want to do that. I think the high school has a pretty good outreach program on my son, so we'll be working at a local computer shop during the school year. That's a great place to get kids involved and try to figure out, what they want to do. I think that's a big part of it. And I think with the healthcare part of it, that can be a huge component of it. We can have water to do that. So, and I think as well, there's a lot of opportunities. It's just trying to figure out, what the resources we have and how we develop them. I mean, we got mines here. That's still a pretty big booming thing. We have to be competitive. I know with meeting with the sheriff today. I mean, I was at a trade show a couple days ago, and it was Sunnyvale's paying like $200,000 a year for a deputy, for an officer. I'm like, how do we compete with that? I said, I don't know. I'm like, that's a good question right there. But there's a lot of opportunities. We've got a great resource of kids here. It's just a matter of how to retain them, train them, and find the jobs that are here that exist. I mean, I have another friend of mine, business owner. They can't find somebody. It's a trade. It's a chimney shop, and they can't find anybody that just wants to work for 2 years and learn the business. How do we change that mindset? I think part of that's in the schools and encouraging kids to, that trades are okay. It's okay. I got a college degree, got a couple of them, but I also work with my hands all the time. I think both have benefit. I think we just have to be able to encourage that a little bit more to see, everybody get a fair shake and to find the jobs that they really want to do and what they want to do them around here.
Mr. Mitchell?
As mentioned, I think the one piece for me is I really want to get a clinic or a hospital in the district down that way. You do have a lot of opportunities down there with the business park and around. But I think also when you're looking at economic development, you got to look really close at what you already have so that you're not opening up something to shut down something else. So when you have a little land out there and you say, hey, we need a grocery store, and you look over and you're like, well, that's my grocery store right there in town. I don't want to build something and wipe out another family or another business that's supported me all these years. So I think you got to be really smart. And part of that's going to be public outreach and saying, okay, we like the idea. I mean, we want to grow, certainly, but what do we want? And from what I've heard, it's been a clinic, certainly down in that area. A hotel has been talked about, but you get beyond that, and then there's a lot of fighting or a lot of different ideas. I think we just need to listen to each other, protect each other, and come up with a plan based on community outreach and fulfilling the needs of the public.
Thank you. Mr. Parker?
So I think there's a lot of things that can be done to help the county attract people who are going to come to enjoy Amador, spend their money, and then go home. But there's also a lot that we need to do in terms of developing what we have here. And it's one of the tragedies for me in the whole way that the school consolidation has gone down is I haven't seen anything that was looked at in terms of possibilities. Because I know there's been talk of a community college in Amador County for years, and it's never sort of had enough legs of its own to take off. But that as part of everything that was going on with all the changes that are being proposed for the school district, could we maybe have taken that, Amador Central Business Park that's there off of Bridge and maybe done, 11, 12, 13, and 14 there, and try to have it so that people don't have to, leave the county to go, get an AA or do a post, high school, learn, get certified as a welder, get certified as an auto mechanic, any of those trades that we so desperately need people to do. And if they can learn that here, they're more likely to stay here. One of the things that Sheriff Redmond's doing as far as keep getting deputies is putting local kids through the academy. So that's, it doesn't guarantee they stay, but if we can have, people who are growing up here being able to develop themselves without having to leave, they're more likely to stay rooted in the community rather than having to leave and then come back. If they can do it here, they're more likely to stay here and the place they grew up and loved. So.
Thank you. Mr. Carnell?
One of the reasons we live here is because there's no freeway going through town. Freeways bring in and out burgers and Targets and all of those things. I don't think we're attracting the large companies, and I don't think we want them. I remember when Walmart opened and our favorite little music store closed up, and then our other favorite little store closed up, and then our other favorite little store closed up. The largest employer in the county, in my opinion, are the small businesses and the trades. And I can tell you, after just about 30 years of being in business here in California, it is demoralizing. I'm sitting in front of you because the options that my wife and I discussed were move somewhere else from the place we were born and we have deep roots, or go get involved. I mean, some of the demoralizing things are from the federal government, some are from the state, but some are right here locally. And I think we should do everything we can. You know, everybody talks about they can't find good help these days, can't find good help these days. Nobody can find any help. Well, it's just demoralizing. Most of the kids out there can get 85% of what they need without working at all. So they're working for 15%. I lost my whole crew during COVID because they could get $3,600 a month. Gone. So we're having to pay, where we need to be able to pay, enough money for people to live and work here. And I don't know about attracting any businesses. How about we just encourage and tell our local businesses how valuable they are to us. Thanks.
Thank you. All right, now we're ready for the next question, right? The next question is, homeowners' fire insurance is a major issue impacting our community. What will you do to ensure the insurance situation improves? And let's start, please, in the middle with Mr. Parker.
So yeah, we just went through this ourselves. The fire insurance company that we had for a number of years dropped us 2 or 3 years ago, and the insurance broker that we've been working with was able to find us another one. And then this last year we got dropped again, and he wasn't able to find us another one. So we're on that lovely California Fair Plan. I'm deeply interested in talking to Logan later on some of the things that he knows about how to maybe help fix that. I think since it is something that is affecting everyone in the county, that it would make a lot of sense for the county to, rather than all of us trying to figure it out ourselves, for the county to do some of that research and say, here's what we have found. So you're not, it doesn't make any sense for all of us to do the same thing over and over and over again, where the county might be able to put something together, at least informationally, if not some kind of a group activity. Unfortunately, this last year when we were looking for it, a lot of the companies, it doesn't even matter if you fire hardened your house. I mean, we have, part of why we have our goats is for milk, but it's also, they keep the vegetation down. That doesn't matter anymore. You can have your setback, and the insurance companies are just completely pulling out of California. So I think there's a lot the county could do to do that research and accumulate it, because it's essentially, this applies equally to everyone in the county, and be able to say, here's information on what your options are, rather than all of us trying to figure that out individually, because it affects us all, and the answer is going to be roughly similar for a lot of us, or at least in large chunks of the county.
Thank you. Let's go to Mr. Mitchell, please. And please tell us your thoughts on the fire insurance situation.
Yeah, I spoke to Senator Amador about this last night. One of the pieces that she's working on is getting some funding back in the form of a payment back that she realizes the increases have gone way too high, similar to the checks you might have received when you were paying gas at $5 a gallon. The other piece was looking at talking about making it a tax deduction or having some sort of tax break. I talked to the State Commissioner of Insurance on fire insurance several years ago and was asking about this problem, and that was when it wasn't even as high as it is now. And he said, oh, we've worked on a program and it's sitting right here on my shelf. And I said, well, what happened? He said, well, it was based on this thing called the Butte Fire. And I said, oh, really? I kind of remember that one. What's been going on with it? And he said, well, it's sitting on my shelf. And so that's what they've done with it. It's been sitting on their shelf. I know you're going to have to work countywide. They need to come up with a plan. We need to work with the state senator who's on board on trying to find some way to alleviate costs. But the fair plan, as everyone knows, is anything but fair, and it needs to stop.
Mr. Epperson?
Yeah, the insurance thing's a nightmare. I talked to several people just in the last couple of days, and just some of how much it's gone up just in this last year, let alone 2 years ago. I think you're going to have to get together all the rural counties of California that have the same issues and get together and make a joint push to be able to get something to change. I mean, we need to talk to our representatives, obviously, but it's a larger problem. And I don't know what the real answer is. It seems probably more of a federal issue at this point because they're just leaving the state. And I don't know how you make somebody do business here. That's the problem. California, they'll tell you got all these rules. It's like, but we don't have to do business here. A lot of people just leave because we create a climate that is almost impossible, to do business. And you're paying $5,000 or $10,000 a year in insurance. I mean, that may be your margin, and then you're out. What are you going to do? So I think for the long-term solution, we're going to have to talk to people a lot higher than us, unite, and really begin to be a general uprising at some point. We got to be able to get their attention because they're not listening right now.
Thank you, and now let's go to Ms. Peters.
Jumping all over here, I wasn't sure where I was in the queue. So I keep saying, we need to work with the Amador Fire Safe Council, and I think they're doing the work that we're doing on the Fire Safe Council is key to helping us locally to prevent wildfires, and that will, in the long run, help lower the rates. If you're participating in the FireWise program, there's 33 communities in Amador County now that are participating in that. That FireWise program does, if you are a member of it and you've done your dispensable space and home hardening, you do get a discount on your insurance for being a part of that program. So that's something else that local citizens can participate in and get a benefit immediately from. Beyond that, I agree that we absolutely have to work with our mountain and foothill neighbors. I sit on the Mountain Counties Water Resources Association with a lot of other jurisdictions, counties, cities, water agencies, and we talk about wildfire safety, but that needs to be parlayed into some sort of an organization that's advocating for all of us up in the foothill mountain counties in order to be heard. Amador County can't go at this alone. We need the support of our neighbors, so we have a louder voice. There's strength in numbers.
Thank you. Mr. Carnell?
Well, I spent my morning clearing trees from around the house so they could have fire safety. So that's where it started. A lot of people have done the work. I've watched them do the work. 20 years ago I worked with the Amador Fire Safe Council. I worked with several FireWise communities. But like everybody said, we're up against an entity. But I think, here's my optimism. I think they pushed just a little too far this year. My brother-in-law is one of the sweetest people you'll ever meet, and he got his $11,000 bill for the fair plan, and I was afraid to be within 15 feet of him. He was angry. And he started talking to Rob Withrow, and Rob was angry. And then the whole group around him were angry. And I'm all for kindness, and I want us to be more civilized as a community, but right now we're being driven out of the mountains. And I've actually talked to some people who go to some of the insurance meetings down in Sacramento, and they insinuate that might be somewhat the goal, to get us out of the mountains. So I don't know if they realize how stubborn we are. But maybe they should learn. Maybe we should let them know, and maybe we should let them know with a unified, loud voice. And that's part of my plan. A lot of the people I've met through my years of doing this, I plan on yelling at them until they start yelling at the person above them, until they start yelling at the person above them. Yelling kindly, without any, with good vocabulary, I'll put it that way.
Thank you. Our next question is, would you please elaborate on your approach to enforcing codes and regulations within Amador County? We certainly know we have a lot of codes and regulations. So what is your approach to enforcing the ones we have? Mr. Mitchell, would you start, please?
Really, I usually, for me, I count on the staff. It's a staff level question to me. Do you have the right people in place that are on code enforcement, and how are they doing it? The number of codes, yeah, I believe in property rights, I believe in personal property. We've got certainly a massive amount of codes, but I think you've got to look and say, okay, are they all working correctly, and is it being done right from the standpoint of the employee running that show? For me, the supervisor's part, certainly you pass codes and see that, but that's coming up from the bottom up, and we need to make sure you look for public input and see if that's going the right way or not. So.
Mr. Epperson?
I mean, largely, I can just speak to my experience I own, but we have all kinds of codes. You couldn't hire an army big enough to enforce them all. Largely complaint driven. And that's, that the problem is that turns neighbor against neighbor, because now you got to rat your neighbor out for doing something that's driving you nuts, which that's part of the deal. If you've got a problem with somebody, you need to be man or woman enough to go over and have the conversation and see if you can get it to apply. As far as compliance, I mean, we lost a pretty big lawsuit years ago, and they violated all kinds of codes, and the court didn't seem to care, so I don't know what to say about that. But I think largely it's complaint-based. The codes we have, as long as I'm about health and safety. I mean, if your neighbors are driving you nuts, you need to, call the right people, have a conversation with them first. And I have a friend of mine, he works in Sacramento, he works in code enforcement, and I asked him, we're having some just chit-chat, I asked him, so on a good day, you guys have an army of guys driving around unmarked vehicles looking for code compliance. He goes, what do you expect? He goes, we might get 40% on a good day. I'm like, well, there you go. I mean, if you want to violate the codes, you're going to violate the codes. I mean, part of that is, pass good laws that people want to obey, encourage them every way you can. The force law only goes so far. The process to get the money out of the people that you're trying to get to comply is lengthy. Usually it involves a sale of property at some point, but I think you hire people to do the best they can, take care of the flagrant stuff, the stuff that is health and safety, and leave people alone. I mean, I just look the other direction sometimes is okay. But as long as it's not causing somebody else's health, or they're driving them crazy, dogs barking too much, just knock on their door. Buy them a dog collar, put it on the front porch and run. How about that?
Thank you. Ms. Peters?
So I have a little bit of history with code enforcement, being a city planner, and being an interim city manager, and I'm sure Supervisor Forrester, in his role as supervisor, has had to deal with a few complaints over his years. Complaints come in, and the way I handle code enforcement is education is first. The public needs to understand why we have those rules and why it's important to enforce them and the impacts of not enforcing them. Education is key, and being sympathetic and empathetic to what the concern is. Why is the person not getting their garbage picked up? Is it because they can't afford it? And if that's the case, help them. Help them. Figure out a way to make it affordable for them, or help them sign up for whatever programs out there. I think that's super important. And leading with empathy is very important. Life safety issues, though. A lot of code enforcement issues boil down to life safety issues, and those you do have to attack aggressively. And I think it is a staff issue. The supervisors have to be supportive of their staff in going after life safety issues.
Mr. Carnell?
We've proven that you cannot legislate morality. It's just impossible. No matter how many rules you can't make a poor neighbor a good neighbor. So, part of code enforcement is enforcement, which means staffing. So, she talked about safety issues. I have a neighbor that I saw gross risks to children and all the way around. And our sheriff's department is running on just on shoestrings as far as their staffing. Our child protective services, when everybody quits about every 3 days, it's the biggest turnover. I couldn't even imagine how. I mean, when I found out how quickly it was turned over. So a lot of the things that we would enforce, we don't even have the staffing to do. So my theory, it might be crazy, is to start borrowing sugar from our neighbors again and be kinder to one another. We're not going to be able to enforce away all of the bad neighbors, but we could just start being better neighbors and be an example to others. I mean, that might sound naive and crazy, but I haven't figured out a way that we're going to. I mean, actually yesterday I was talking to a guy and he has about 700 broke down vehicles in his yard, and he says all of his neighbors are upset at him, but he sees value in all 700 of those cars. And so what am I going to do? He might not like the look of my yard either. Neither does my wife with my broke down cars.
Mr. Parker?
I agree with a lot of what has been said. What I don't think has been touched on is that it has to be consistent. If codes are being enforced in one area, that needs to be relatively even and not really have much to do with who's necessarily involved and who might know who. So that's a key aspect of it. The other thing I'll say is, having done a remodel in Amador and having done a remodel in Sacramento, whole different experience. The building department here was a joy to work with. Our architect in Sacramento, pointed out the 3 errors that he intentionally put into the plans before submitting them, because he said they're going to have to find something, and I might as well give them things that they're going to find. It was 6 weeks to get somebody out and do an inspection and things like that. Building department here really feels like what it's supposed to be. I mean, if they see something that's an issue, they talk to you about it. But you need an inspection. 2 days later, you've got someone there. Say, I might put a GFI there if I were you, but you don't necessarily need to. Oh, okay. I am not an electrician. Thank you for telling me that. Yeah, we'll have one put in. And when it comes to someone's rooster crowing too loudly, well, you did move to Amador. I have to look into whether Amador has a right to farm like Calaveras does. I don't know if anyone knows that, but that there is a, if you're gonna move out here, there's a whole set of things that you're going to expect. But and looking at what those codes are that are relevant to where we live here, there's some state codes and things that don't really apply to where we are, and I don't think get applied and probably shouldn't be. But again, doing that consistently and keeping aware of where we all live.
Thank you. We have one more question from the audience tonight, and that is about, are there plans for additional cell towers to improve cell and internet services in Amador? And this is from a resident in Pine Grove. And let's begin with Ms. Peters, please.
So I attended the Board of Supervisors meeting on Tuesday, last Tuesday. I was there on another issue, but I stayed because I thought it was very interesting. They gave John Hopkins from the General Services Administration brought forward a discussion on grants, and I'm very sorry. One of the grants that he gave an update on was on broadband in the area. So there is grant money at the county level right now to increase broadband to the county. I honestly don't know much more than that there is money available, and I hope that the Board of Supervisors continues to pursue additional funds for that, because it's an important issue. For accessibility, being able to attend meetings remotely, for students to be able to have internet access for research, to attract industry up here and to attract those that work from home. It's an important tool that we need to be able to make sure we have the highest and best that we can offer.
Thank you. Mr. Carnell?
Last I heard, there was a cell tower that was supposed to go in at Molly Joyce Park in Pioneer, but somebody thought it, and now they didn't want it in their view, so.
I'll take it. In my yard.
You'll take it in your yard?
Right in my yard.
That's what I was thinking. I mean, that's the one stretch. Buckhorn doesn't get much service. I still miss the days we didn't have those things. Sorry, just my little opinion. Yeah, when we first got cell phones here, we knew the phone booth, so it was right in front of Kirkwood, and it was right at Red Corral, and then there were a few spots in Jackson, and it's grown, and I haven't heard any rumor of new ones going, other than, because it's not going to go in Molly Joyce, I think they were talking about at the Cedar Mill. So there is a corridor in there that doesn't have service. There's about one bar in Buckhorn, and there are 2 bars in the back corner of Base Meadows, and there's 2 bars in Amador Pines if you get right on the corner of Manzanita. Yeah, I drive these roads every day. I can tell you every bar, everywhere. There's law enforcement here. I never talk on my phone while I'm driving. But yeah, I haven't heard anything about that, sorry.
Mr. Parker?
I also haven't heard anything specific, but good cell coverage and broadband internet has gone from being something that's nice to have to being, a necessary utility. I mean, in a lot of ways, it's analogous to the rural electrification from 100-odd years ago. And in order to participate in a whole lot of things, you need to be able to have that. I mean, there's I don't know if it's true in Amador, but in a lot of places you can't even access the court docket and look at things without access to their website. So increasingly, internet connectivity and reasonably good internet connectivity is becoming necessary, not just nice. And that is a thing that I do think we need to be looking at as a county, tapping into. I know that at the federal level there is money that's being put into that, and I think there's, again, it's going to be an initiative in a lot of these more rural areas similar to rural electrification, and I think there's money out there and at the state and federal level, and I think we need to do whatever we can to go after that and make sure that everybody, everybody in the county has that kind of connectivity where they need it, and I think it'll also tie back into some of the other things we were talking about in terms of being able to pull people here and keep people here. And if someone's working from home, online, they're not adding to traffic. They're not. I mean, there's a whole set of things that are good about people being able to do business from their homes and the like. So I think as a county, we need to do what we can to support increasing cell coverage and broadband internet, but I don't think we can do it ourselves. I think we need to go out and find money that's out there to help with that kind of initiative, and I'm pretty confident it's there. We just need to go hunt it down.
Thank you. Mr. Mitchell?
From my understanding, Volcano Communications has received some funding, I believe federally. I'm meeting with them tomorrow, but it's coming from Nevada down through, and I don't know if it provides towers, but I know it's cell or internet from Nevada. He was quite excited with Nevada right down into the city of Jackson that will enhance the pieces. I think the big piece for me is the public safety aspect of it. When you can have someone in our district cut an AT&T wire and take out the fire service and the sheriff's office and our communications, that scares me. Sorry, I'm magnetic too. But it's a serious problem, and I know they're working on it. I know there are going to be some things coming in. I'm not sure exactly what that is. I know they're excited to share it, so I think it'll be coming in the paper soon.
Mr. Epperson?
I don't know anything about cell towers, so I do know something that there is actually in Ione. There's a guy who started a company doing line-of-sight high-speed internet, so if that's of interest to you. So if you're in Ione, you can see a cell tower, you get high-speed internet, and the guy's going around. It's pretty cheap too, so you might check that out. He's a member of the Ione Business Media Association. As far as the cell towers themselves, I know Island's had issues for years with the EMS repeater from El Dorado and other places, but I think that's probably one piece of it, is to make sure that we have good access to communication. That's a really big part of that. As for cell phones, if you need a cell tower, Kirkwood, just past Bear River Reservoir, and when you get into Pine Grove, there you go.
Thank you. I'd like to take a moment just to thank the audience for your participation tonight and cooperating with our codes and guidelines. And we'll begin now with our ending statements, please. Our closing statements are for 3 minutes, and we'll begin with Ms. Peters. Thank you.
I want to start by thanking the AAUW. This is a valuable event and service that you provide to the community, and I thank you for doing that. I also want to thank KVGC and the Ledger Dispatch. KVGC is live streaming this, so it gives the opportunity for those that can't make it down here to see it, and I think that's important. And our radio station, local radio station, and our local newspaper is invaluable to us. And I encourage all of our residents and businesses to support them so that they can stay in business and continue to provide us a valuable service. I also want to thank Logan for agreeing to be here tonight, so thank you. 2 minutes to answer some of these questions isn't enough. If you have additional questions, I am happy to meet with you. I'm happy to talk to you, take a phone call, answer an email. I've already been answering a lot of emails, getting some great questions. You can go to my website. It's Peters, the number 4, supervisor.com. There's a contact page there that you can reach me through. Also, I'm on Facebook at Elect Susan Peters. So I started public service when I was 24, when I joined the Planning Commission in Cedar Creek. When I moved in, there was a lot of housing development happening, and there wasn't a lot of people involved. And so I got involved early, and I stayed involved, and I kind of got bit by the public service bug. And I've worked continually through my professional career and my volunteer work to hone my experience, gather institutional knowledge, and get leadership skills. I think I've done a really good job at the Amador Water Agency representing the District 4 people and the county as a whole, and I would like to take that experience onto the Board of Supervisors, and I need your help, and I would like your vote on March 5th. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Carnell?
I have 2 closings. How much time do I have? 3 minutes? 3, okay. I'm going to read fast. There's been much ado made about experience in this race, so here goes. Professionally as Logan and personally as Logan, Desiree, and Michael, I have successfully and amicably worked on various projects with Amador County Recreation, Transportation, Agriculture, the airport, fire protection, animal control, supervisors, building department, courts, environmental health, facilities, fair, motor pool, road department, school district, sheriff, social service, CPS, APS, surveyor, veterans services, the water agency. I've worked with the city of Ione, the city of Jackson, the city of Cedar Creek, the city of Plymouth, the city of Emerald City, the city of Cedar Creek, agencies such as CAL FIRE, Caltrans, PG&E, Volcano Telephone, Pine Grove Community Services District, United States Forest Service, CHP, Italian Benevolent Society, St. Solomon, Kennedy Mine, Fire Safe Council, Firewise Communities, the Jackson Rancheria, all of the restored parks, Mason Meadows, Interfaith Food Bank, innumerable nonprofits, and much, much more. I always treated the people in those entities with dignity and respect, and they reciprocated in kind. When word got out that I was running, I was shocked by the overwhelming outpouring of support from current and past employees and volunteers, wanting signs in their yard and wanting to know what they could do to help. They know my experience, they know my work ethic, they know my character. So that was that. Is that 1 minute? Did you catch all those? There's going to be a test. Okay, so here's me. I've studied the great leaders of old, and the ones that had the most lasting impact, that was not just lasting, but it was also edifying to the people around them, they all shared a quality. and they realize that in order to lead, you have to be a servant. The greatest among you shall be the least. They weren't seeking power or glory or money or prominence. They truly, deeply cared about the people in their sphere of influence. Look, I have a wonderful, peaceful, comfortable life right now. I'm surrounded by people I love and who love me. I live in this amazing, beautiful place. It's been a shelter from the storm of all the national and state strife. I want to see it flourish. I don't have any preconceived, rigid ideas. I've learned so much in the last 2 months. Shocking, just talking to people how much I've learned. And I've changed my opinion on a lot of things once I learned the facts about what's actually going on. So, I'm not accepting any donations. I'm not going to know what well, other than from my immediate family, because my mother-in-law wouldn't listen, my mom wouldn't listen either. So, I'm not going to owe anybody anything when I get there, other than the voters. I'm offering myself for your vote. If you choose otherwise, I fully respect that. I will go back to my peaceful life. I'm getting ready to play with grandbabies. I will go back. But I would just ask, if you don't choose me, don't forget the hard-working families that are raising kids that are around you, that are providing you your food and providing you your services. Just don't forget them. And one last thing. Oh, I have to stop. Okay.
Thank you. Mr.
That's the most important point.
I was tempted to see Logan a minute of my time. This is not anything that I ever intended to do. I was pinged by someone at the end of November saying, "Did you know that Richard Forrester is retiring?" And I did not. I've been a very happy hermit on my goat ranch for the last 8 years, and looked at that and realized, if someone isn't there doing the job that I think needs to be done, then if we aren't where I want to be in 20 years, then I have no one to blame for that except myself. So that's why I pulled papers and registered to do this. Again, not anything that was ever in my plan, but I think it's important to be done, and I hope to be able to represent people across the district and serve people across the county as well as I possibly can. I don't have anywhere near that list of experience, not tied into any of those organizations yet. My experience in the consulting field crossed, a whole bunch of different sectors. I mean, I worked with companies that were in just about every sector of the economy there is. And the biggest thing I bring on from that is 20 years of knowing how to come into a situation without being pre-decisional, looking at what's there, absorbing the data, talking to people, listening to what the situation is, analyzing it, and coming up with alternatives, and multiple alternatives. Not, oh, here's the answer. It's, well, here's a set of answers, and being, and having a lot of experience in going through and assessing those potential solutions, and doing it in a way that is cleanly documented. I mean, there's a lot of tools for that where don't necessarily make your decisions quickly, but they make them in a way that is documentable, understandable, and communicatable to people. That you can look at how a decision was made and understand what was there, and tools that are used to reach out to people and help in how you're evaluating those. So the biggest thing I bring to this is sort of a fresh vision to all of the situations and problems that we have in Amador that I think we haven't really been able to deal with or solve just using the same ideas that we've had in the county, and I hope to be able to bring an entirely new set of ideas to that, and hopefully help take care of a lot of them, so we can all live in a county that's healthier and doing better.
Thank you. Mr. Mitchell?
I'd like to thank the AAUW for putting on this event, and certainly KVGC. I think Jim Giddy was one of the first folks that I met, in fact, the first folk that I met when I arrived here. So I think for me, I am the only one, well, there's a couple interesting facts about me. One, I'm the only person that's been involved with more organizations in town than Long and Logan. I also have never bought anything from Amazon. Probably the only one in the country, or in the world for that matter. I went to Richard Forrester before he announced that he was not running and told him I got some bad news. I'm not saying I won't run, but I'd probably think twice about it. No, I'm going to run, Richard, I'm sorry. And he looked at me and he said, well, I'm not running. And then he told me it's good that I'm not, because if I did, I'd kick your butt. And we still haven't debated that one out yet. But, I too wanted a fresh set of eyes and thought it was time for change. Not drastic change. The care has always been there. The heart is always there. The fight is there. It's just sometimes I think it's just time for a different look. I have been involved in all sorts of different groups, from AAUW to Chamber of Commerce to Operation Care to Amador Arts to on and on and on. And somewhere along the line, in covering a bunch of stories for a job, I fell in love with the people. And I fell in love, not with just one or two of you, but all of you together. So maybe I am a little crazy, but I want to go to work for you, and I promise you I will not give up. I will not slow down, and I won't care any less. I'm going to care more, and I'm going to do more, and I'm going to fight for you, and I'm going to listen to you, and we're going to find solutions together. And I'm hoping that you vote for me. Russ, thanks for being here tonight. Dan, thanks for being here tonight. I know you've got tough choices to make, but I would certainly hope I can get your vote. If you have questions, please reach out to me so I can get those answers. Again, these are short little nights, and I know you guys all have busy lives. I am out there. In fact, tonight I'll be doing the route, so if you're out in my district, then see me slinging papers. It's a good time to ask questions. We're at the fire station, or when I'm covering a store. But really, ask questions, get your item to me so that we can start working for you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Epperson.
Yeah, I moved to Amador County in 2002, not to work, to serve, and I've done that diligently. Probably my favorite thing about Amador County is the people. I think I like the parade days in Ione. What I like about that is a bunch of little kids say, "Hey, Pastor Dan." I love that. Right now, let's see what time it is, 20:35. So in about 10 minutes, I'll be driving the church van, normally taking a bunch of kids out to Comanche, drive them off the Oaks. So I've done that for about 20 years. And I do that most every week. So I see the church van, funny colors on it, driving by, that's probably me. Just wave at me and honk or whatever else you want to do. But no, I came here to serve, and I didn't plan on getting into politics. I threw my hat in the ring because, like most, I saw things I just couldn't live with. I just had to do something about it. My wife one night, she told me, she said, you yell at the TV more than anybody I know. You got to get off and do something. So I did. Next thing you know, I'm sitting in the office. So it's kind of a rude awakening when you swear in, and all of a sudden you're making decisions for everybody else. It's kind of wild. I enjoyed that, and I look forward to serving again. I serve with the sheriff's office. I'm a law enforcement officer there. I think those guys, they lay it down day in, day out. I think we have to do our best to protect them and keep them. And that comes with economic development, building a better community with more opportunities, more jobs, making that widely known, and trying to keep our kids close. We got roads always to worry about. There's always plenty of things to do. But if you elect me, I do appreciate your vote. I thank you, AAUW, for hosting, for KBGC for recording this, and thank you to the public. Most importantly, the public. There wasn't a day that went by. There's two things I love about public office. One, honestly, was pledge the flag every night. Everything. Look at the red and the flag. I realize what it stands for. Sorry, I'm emotional all the time. I wear my heart on my sleeve. I'm sorry. But I love that, and I love that the fact that people would trust you a little bit to be able to go up and make decisions for them. We look at representative government, and I never took that lightly. Every night I would sit in that dais, and I realized I'm making decisions for people. It's not a job. It's you get paid $200 a month. What do you do? You know, I even cover gas most of the time. But what it was good was when you make good decisions over a long period of time, you begin to see change. And there's a reason why my city council elected me mayor 5 times. because I'm serious about it. I worked my butt off every chance I got. I made good decisions and negotiated tough contracts to make our community better. And if you give me your vote, I will do that in Amador County for District 2. Thank you.
Thank you. A round of applause for these candidates. Thank you again for coming. Good night, everyone.